This next episode is with one of the best storytellers I know, not just with a camera, but also verbally. One of the busiest and hardest working people I know in show business, Mr. Steve Angel. What's good, Angel?
Hey, brother. I'm sorry I picked up the phone. I knocked you off.
No,
I guess
good.
still got it on the charger. How are you today?
Good. How about yourself?
I took my walk. My neck's killing me. Did I tell you I talked to a coach yesterday?
No, what kind of coach?
I'm sorry, Coach Pierce lives right down the street from me.
Oh, look at you, Swanky. I didn't know you lived in that kind of neighborhood.
But he's kind of gone. He's kind of slumming it. I'm sorry, my phone, and I'm kind of uptown in it.
Yeah. I bet.
That's the case. I'm perfectly happy in the house that I had.
Anything
for
good?
My wife.
Anything good spoken on?
No, he said that I see his wife and his daughter out all the time when I take my walk, because that's where I walk through on their street.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that's the second time I've seen him. That's not like we're.
Yeah, I'm sure he's really home.
I don't know. He might be, but he said he couldn't go to the practice facility. The practice facility was opening yesterday, and he couldn't be there. Which I kind of threw my hands up, and he said, "Time and patience." Time and patience. I said, "You haven't really heard anything." He goes, "No, not really. Just it is what it is."
Right.
Who knows? I read something today in the whatever it was, an old report about them trying to get 2 sites.
Mm-hmm.
I also read that the owners are going to lose potentially $300 million from China. But the weird thing is they don't share that shit. I'm convinced they don't share that shit with the players. Maybe I'm naive in that regard, but I don't know, because I always thought that 10-cent thing kind of came in under the radar, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I would assume
it's definitely a league thing. Yeah, you would think, right? I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It's hard to say. We just assume that when was that 10-cent deal done in relation? Here's the thing. It would make me think, when was that 10-cent deal done in relation to the players' negotiation?
Right. I'm sure there was something that was entered into at some point in time. But I'll tell you this: I remember point blank, because it was a huge, huge deal. I mean, bigger than the finals kind of thing,
mm-hmm.
because we were going to show Yao Ming in China for the first time, and he played against Shaq. And he brought people gifts, and he was very, Chinese-esque, and that's not to say he's a very sweet man, and everything I've read about him is unbelievable. And Coach Van Gundy's told me he's still
a great ambassador too. I mean, it's interesting to see him now, still,
Yeah, yes. I mean, literally, Van Gundy told me one time he called him, like 8:30 in the morning. He forgot it was like 3:45 there, or 3, whatever.
Right.
And
just the opposite.
He left a message, and then and at the end of it, he goes, "Oh shit, I'm sorry. Must be whatever."
Yeah,
he said, like 7 minutes later, he called him back. Once he awakened and said, "Oh, Coach needs me." He goes, "Listen, just call me back later." He goes, "No, what's wrong?" And he was just trying to get one of his friends a job.
Right. It wasn't even that serious.
A translator or this or that. It would be a good. He was a good coach, but he was just, said, "Well, I don't really know of anything right now. I guess I could reach out to China." And the guy goes, "I'm desperate. I got 4 kids." He goes, "Okay, I'll call." And he said, "Yeah, I'll pick up." And said, "I'll make 5 calls today as soon as it gets to be light." And got him a job. And he said he's just like the nicest, gracious, most unbelievably sweet human there ever has been. That said and done, he and Shaq played. He blocked Shaq's first dunk attempt, and there were 3. Jimmy could not go on and on and on and on about there being 300 million people watching the game.
Right.
And it was and it was one of the first times they put a Supermo at camera 3. And I remember that point. It was in Houston, and it was a huge deal, and I'm sure that was to introduce or to start the
international, right, to kind of give them a little taste, a little flavor, and
they'd seen highlight packages and the Saturday night wraparound. Hey, I'm Grant Hill, I'm smooth as butter. Hey, I'm Summer, whatever, I'm slick as ice. Hey, we're here to that.
Right, no doubt.
Highlight show stuff.
Mm-hmm. But for them to get a full-on game with one of their countrymen was probably a big step forward in the NBA relations.
And, the funny thing of all this stuff, and I was just reading that they're saying they're not going to televise the games. Houston actually physically changed their color of their uniforms to the same color that Yao had
for the Republic of China.
It was actually yes, it is, but it's actually the Shanghai Sharks.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is, if you look that up, it's a really interesting point. But it was basically to sell more jerseys in China, and they kind of put it under the guise of, hey, new style this year, but really it was actually.
I mean, you know what? There's nothing.
New style.
All they did was set the standard, because if you think about it, look at all the jerseys in general with the urban jerseys that represent each city for whatever their
absolutely
uniqueness is. The one of the better ones I think is I actually like Golden State's. I don't remember exactly. It's like the Chinese New Year emblem sort of thing going on. Right. It's pretty dope,
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I get it. It's
Brooklyn has the Big E, Cool G,
right,
sort of stuff going on. Miami's got the Miami Vice one.
Yes, I see some of that. I get some of that. And if you're a 17-year-old kid who didn't make the junior varsity, and they're your favorite team, and that's your passion and your joy, and I think I've told you this one before, but dancer, a guy who was in Singing in the Rain, named Gene Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And a famous quote you can look up, it's very interesting, is he said, I would give every bit of every dollar of every million that I ever made to play shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates for one inning. Because that's where he grew up, and that's what he wanted to be when he was 9 years old.
Okay.
Shoeless, whatever. Yeah, everybody's got those.
Yeah, I mean, it's no cliche, right? Every artist wants to be an athlete. Every athlete wants to be an artist. They all want to swap jobs. And
well, you know what? Al Eastman would have given his eye teeth to play for the Kansas City Chiefs because he grew up in Kansas City. And
I didn't know he was a big football. I mean, I know he likes football, but I didn't know he wanted to play.
He played football at Southern. Southern.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, one of his associates in Baton Rouge, he used to shoot at I think Baton Rouge TV station.
Mm-hmm. He did.
One of the guys quietly told me, and Al has never told me this. And this is
How good was he? How good was he?
I don't know. He went to a couple of tryout camps. Obviously, he was good enough to get the scholarship at Southern, which is one of the premier, predominantly African American schools. And Grambling was another one that was really a 5-star. Could have beaten a lot of other teams, kind of thing.
What did Quiet as kept? You were saying?
Say this again?
No, you were saying
he actually he worked out, and I think he went to a couple of open tryout kind of things, or was going to.
Right.
That one of those where he thought he had a viable chance, and obviously he didn't, but or it
didn't work out. Right.
I don't know what the consequences were. Maybe he tweaked a knee or an ankle right before. I have no earthly idea. I
think his destiny was to be with us in television.
Well, he certainly. It's our
pleasure.
Our gain. Yes, exactly. No doubt about that. No doubt whatsoever. But that said and done, one of the greatest storytellers, photographers, shooters, whatever you want to call him, of our time was almost
a football player, a defensive back,
exactly. He's tough. He's strong. I don't know how fast he was, but like I say, he already had salt and pepper in his beard when I met him.
Right.
So he was
he
already
probably drinking one of those ancient Asian elixirs to keep himself,
He might. Well, he's still running handheld.
Exactly, from Louisiana or something.
Coleman's for running handheld at 72.
I know. Actually, I think he's turning 70 in August. He revealed that to us.
There used to be a guy in Philly, and the main reason I remember is because he used two total lights to light the talent, and it was like 4,000 watts of light. And this guy, he ran camera 3 actually for the.
He was giving guys tans while he was.
Oh, but the guys were squinting like motherfuckers. I mean, they could barely see, and he would put these two things about 10 feet, 5 feet away from them, and in order for everything else to look. For their flesh tones to look decent, it looked like they were almost shooting, like the lights were off in the arena, if you know what I'm saying. Put it down to like F16, F22, whatever, just barely leaking a little light into the lens. But that's the way this guy lit it, and he'd lit it that way since they needed every bit of that light, if you know what I'm saying, back in the early 60s or 70s or whatever.
Right.
And this guy ran handheld every day, and we never was on our show. I mean, I never saw him on an ESPN or Turner show, but he would always be on the home show every game, and that was his slot. Not unlike the guy that runs low first at Boston, Tomaselli, if you remember that kind of heavy set guy.
Right.
Boston.
Right.
That kind of guy. It's like, he's been there forever and going to be there till he can't walk kind of thing.
Right.
And this guy was 70 plus. I was like, what the hell's he doing running handheld? Why isn't he up here running game? They said, that's what he likes. He's wiry. He's ornery. He does a good job. Home people loved him. He's an institution. He says when he's going to, leave kind of thing.
Right. He calls his own shot. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and eventually he's not doing it anymore. So I guess he retired eventually or died, one of the two. I'm sorry to say. But we all will, but it's interesting to me. And I'll tell you this: Oz says he likes it because he loves being down there, all the action.
Yeah, he said that he did. He does a good job. I mean, that's the other part of it. I think one of those things where you'll know when you can't do it anymore. Like especially handheld, it tells you. There's no, shit.
No, just trust me.
Yeah,
on a first name basis.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, to me, is with Summer League, and I did a bunch of the WNBA stuff. I probably did more handheld last year than I've done in 5 years. And then I did the draft. I did that handheld. So it's kind of a weird dynamic in that regard. Is Jimmy doesn't think I could ever do it again, and I've done 80 events.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I was gonna say
you do a great job there. Yeah, no, it's that's a whole nother can of worms I don't want to open up.
Right.
But yeah, you kind of know, and it's interesting. Some people gladly say, no, I can't ever do it again, and other people begrudgingly say, no, I can't do it. I've tried, but I can't. And that's, as I've told you before, that's one of my litmus tests of I don't know, being a good teammate, being a bad teammate. I'd like to talk about being a teammate. I could talk about that today.
Oh, we'll have plenty of that. You want to?
Okay.
How about this? Why don't you give me a little bit of history? Well, let's do this. State your name, and then my question is going to be, how did you get into sports?
You ready?
Yeah.
Are we recording now?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. My name is Steve Angel. I got into sports kind of through the back door. I always wanted to do it. I watched a lot of TBS baseball on the Superstation. I knocked on the door at TBS for 6 years. And a friend, they were opening the Georgia Dome. I was already working, shooting features, documentaries at the Weather Channel. That's where I cut my teeth shooting. And my friend Tony Grohovsky said, they're starting a Jumbotron at the Georgia Dome. I know some people there. And if you want me to put a good word in for you. And he did. And I got, a job, and I was a half utility, half shooter, which was a, bit to swallow because I'd already shot for 5-7 years.
Right.
But I did it, and it taught me how. And as fate would have it, a lot of the TBS guys, they had non-compete clauses in their
contracts with Turner?
their contracts with Turner. Yeah, they didn't have contracts, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was sort of like this is understood. Yes,
they could. You couldn't take a vacation day, but and go work the ABC Georgia Tech game,
right?
In that kind of order. So they had the skill set, but they didn't have the means, and it was very rare that they could. Here's this great group of 8-12 guys, and they couldn't be used by the freelance community. On rare occasion, they could, But that said and done, 2 or 3 of them, Tony Marshall, Ron Sutton, Scott Marks, a number of them would freelance for the Dome because that was in-house and it was non-conflicting with their job titles. And Ron was one of the supervisors, and I worked with him 3-4 years. I don't know exactly how long. And the fall, I was working, literally 7 days a week. Because we would do a college football game and the Falcons on Saturday and Sunday, and a lot of times we'd do corporate events during the week. We shot a number of concerts. We did all kinds of stuff, and I saw a lot of people approach Ron, who was the figurehead, so to speak. And the only real way to get into TBS was through him. He was the crewer, and I'd ask him once a year. I'd say, "Hey, if you ever need anybody," he says, "I'm watching you. You're getting better." And I worked my way up there. I raised my hand every chance I got. I shot all the promotional stuff. I shot all the programs. I shot the ball on the tee, background slightly out of focus for the graphic. Hey, next Saturday, fan appreciation, all that kind of junk. But I applied myself as hard as I could, and I watched as much as I could. And the beauty of having 3 or 4 cameras is you're going to get replays, and you're going to find out really fast where you are.
Absolutely.
In focus or not. And that's the beauty of working a small show. And Tony Marshall directed, actually, and he taught me a great deal. And eventually I got an opportunity. Like I say, I knocked on the door 6 years.
Good.
And eventually a football weekend came up. Well, I was persistent, if nothing else. And I had a full-time job, so it wasn't like I was going hungry.
Right.
But I yearned for the I don't know what the right term. Well, I yearned for the opportunity. My dad watched TBS baseball every night, and I watched it growing up and seen that whole thing blow up to a national, 120, 130 games. And by the time I got on it, there were 15 or 16 cameras, which, as you and I both know, is damn near World Series every night.
Right.
So I did about a year of freelancing on the visitor side. And then they offered me the TBS package, which was a huge deal because there were only 1 or 2 freelancers on the TBS
traveling crew.
Yes. And I didn't do a great deal of traveling, but I did a lot. But I want to tell you one story if I can.
Yeah,
I found I don't know how many years I did, but for a number of years I did tight center down low. I mean, right behind the left fielder. And
because at that time that's where
it
was. Later on, they wound up moving it further up and out of the stadium, damn near.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But at the time, they wanted to be right down there, right? I mean, it was maybe, I don't know, you've been to that platform, 15 feet above, so you were right in line with the batters and the pitchers, and you're also 50, 60, 70 yards closer to the plate, so you could get in pretty tight and see a lot of stuff and do a lot of stuff. And I liked running that camera because in between each pitch, I was bored to tears because unless the guy hit a home run, or I wasn't going to get a replay. So I would fish in each dugout, and I would learn each team, and I tried to, figure a way to contribute because I was at the bottom of the at the food chain, so to speak.
In terms of like being part of the storyline.
Being part of the storylines, being part of the team, being part of the storytellers. I was the, hey, could you go get me some more coffee kind of guy. And that's
in terms of television, I know what you're saying.
Yes, that's a harsh example, but we've all done that. And, at that point in time, it was even more so than it is now in that regard because people had a set way of cutting their replays, and they actually had it still in tape. So if you weren't in a machine, you had a hard time. They eventually moved me to low first. I didn't want to go. And they said, why not? You'll be right next to Bobby Cox. You'll be our eye in the sky, so to speak, see stuff. And I said, because I can work both dugouts from where I am. And they went, oh, that's interesting. You do that. And once a year I'd get my hand slapped because I'd miss a hit because I was in the dugout because Chipper Jones or Andrew Jones had just, wrenched an ankle. Yeah, and they crushed one on the first pitch, kind of thing, and I didn't get back. But that was few and far between.
Well, but I want you to explain when you say get back, because typically people who might be listening don't quite understand. So what that means in relation to what it is you're supposed to be, and I put that in quotes, shooting. So at some point explain what your assignment is.
Oh, sure.
And in relation to what you're supposed to be doing and then what you are doing on the side.
Well, primarily, every camera has a set series of assignments. For low or tight center, Bill Webb actually did it 1,000 years ago, not 1,000, and but it's now standard practice, and you see it. You see the catcher, you see the umpire, and the batter, and they'll put graphics over it. The guy's facing the pitcher, looking right at you, so to speak. It's a little off center, but you get the essence of it. And for the pitch proper, some people prefer to see the pitch being thrown. Some people just want to see it tight and head to toe, so you can see was the ball over the plate or not. Once again, it's a little off center, but you get a pretty good idea. That ball was low. That ball was tight. That ball was high. So on and so forth. That's their go-to for pitches in that regard. A side swing from low first to low third, I could explain them all, but the essence of it is we each have assignments, and the primary assignment of tight center is the swing. Does he make full contact? Did he have to reach? Did he lunge? Did the ball actually touch the bat? Did the glove actually hit the bat? And
where did that catcher get hit at?
Right, exactly. So to that end, to go back, that's your primary. But if a guy's just hit a grand slam home run and he's getting showered with all kinds of stuff, it's usually permitted for maybe a high third, which is shooting into the Braves dugout, or high first, potentially, to stay if something unusual or different, or everybody is ignoring him, or everybody's loving on him, because now the game has changed with that one swing. That said and done, if the next guy comes up and hits a home run and you're not where you're supposed to be, then you've failed in your mission. And knowing when to and not to is a large degree of experience and sometimes luck, But if you're too aggressive, and I've been accused of that, and I'd rather be too aggressive than not aggressive enough, you can get in trouble. And once or twice a year I might. But that's said and done.
What's a great line you told me? I don't know if I don't want to cut you off, but I am going to cut you off actually. What's a great line? Do you remember the line you told me about trying and because it's basically in line with being aggressive, about trying and what those consequences can be when you're trying to get fish for something, how it can go either one way or another, and how a director might. Do you remember that comment?
I sort of do, but I don't remember the Titan version.
Okay, a great angelism that you gave me one time was that if you don't get yelled at by a director, you are not trying hard enough, because essentially there are going to be times that when you're trying to find an extraordinary image, that it will take you away from your assignment, and there's going to be times, just like you said, you're wrong. It was the wrong time to do it. You probably should just stay with whatever your assignment was. But if you're not trying to do that, then, or if it doesn't happen, then you're not trying. You remember that?
I would say that. Yes, I do recall that, and I doubt any director would ever want to hear any of us ever say that. But the fact is that that's been proven 1,000 times over, and knowing when and when not to break serve, so to speak, is a residue of experience, residue of knowledge, residue of no, something's not right. He is hurt, and I'm going to stay with him, even if I miss this one swing, because he's cringing in a way that in the 9 years that I've watched him, day in and day out, he has never behaved this way before, and that is once again the residue of actually putting all that down on the hard drive, so to speak. Or you can blindly just go right back to what you had, and you won't be wrong, but you'll never get the image that's really the one that leads Sports Center, or the one that is shown 400 times, because this guy's season is effectively over for the rest of the of the season. And knowing that and sensing that and knowing when to do that, ultimately producers and directors will give some folks a little more latitude than others in that regard. In a well, by God, you better be right, because you might miss something kind of thing. And if you are too aggressive, I'm going to drop a name on you. I did Monday Night Football for a number of years with a guy named Coach Gruden. And Coach Gruden told me point blank, he said, I'd much rather, and every coach that's worth his salt would rather have a player that's too aggressive and have him and rein him in than trying to push some 400-pound guy to the weight room to get to 325, if you will.
Right.
Maybe that's a bad analogy, but
no,
I don't think it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that said and done, you have to know when to be what's the right term, judicious in your aggressive behavior. And I think I told you the story. It was on Monday Night Football. I got yelled at very vehemently because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I told you that story?
No. Mm-mm. I'm sure this has happened more than once, so there could be more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But for every one, I would say there's probably 10 I would put in a good column.
Exactly.
And other directors or producers might disagree with that, but I hope they wouldn't. And I'm not bragging on myself.
But that's part of the risk versus reward sort of game at a certain level that you play. I don't think any guy that I've spoken to at this point would disagree with that. There are plenty of times that they shoot off the cuff because they see something, whether it be, Steve Lowe made a really good point about how essentially knowing the game, much like you're saying, being a student of the game, playing the game even, sometimes gives you more insight to be able to get that instinct, that feeling of like, you know what, he's going to call a timeout now, or this is the type of play they're probably going to go with, or this is the guy they're looking for. And this is all within the same vein of thought,
I couldn't agree more. I would also like to say on the record, every single person you've interviewed is a better camera operator than I am, that you've listed. And I say that knowing full well they've done it longer and better. But my agreement with Steve, who's one of the very best there is and ever will be.
And you guys have the best hair, and Tim too. Let me just put that out there.
Yeah, well, the hair can sometimes get in the way of the shot. If I tried, I could become a very competent, very good hockey camera operator. We did it for a few years. You remember we had the Thrashers. But I will never do it as well as somebody who's played it. And I say that confidently only in the fact that I am borderline arrogant in my knowledge of basketball because I played it countless hours, countless days. I know what a real turned ankle is, and I know what a severely high sprained ankle looks like because I've experienced all of that. I've had 4 knee operations. I know when a guy falls down without doing anything, what that looks like. And I am going to stay with that guy no matter what. And if I get yelled at, so be it. And I've been right a few more times than not. And I dare say that my knowledge, or Steve's knowledge, Steve played basketball a great deal, and is greater than most producer directors, unless, of course, they play basketball as well, and they may have. And the same thing holds true with baseball or football. Most of the guys that I know that are really, really good at a certain sport played it, continued to read about it, continued to go to the park and play with their kids or coach a little league team, and so on and so on and so forth, and find out nuance and subtlety and advanced classes, if you will.
Master classes even.
To the day they die, exactly. And when you talk to one of those people, you go, wow, I thought I knew something about baseball. And then I just talked to Al Issue, and I've got to step my game up.
I don't know shit.
Yeah, exactly. But that said and done, I don't believe, just because you haven't played a sport doesn't mean you can't necessarily cover it if you've been a fan.
Absolutely.
I would say, and that's my argument for women in baseball that may not have, but played softball through college, know the dynamic, know that was a smart play. He hit to the right center to advance the runner. Now he set up a completely different scenario for his coach. So I guess my point is you don't have to have played to be a good observer. I don't think there's any substitute for it. And maybe that's arrogance on my part in that regard.
I think you're absolutely right. That's the sort of the cliche of hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, Right,
exactly. Anyway, my long-winded story comes back to I got yelled at like you wouldn't believe because a player for the Giants. This was in the Meadowlands. Came off the sideline late in the game, and he was writhing in pain. And I think his name was Tiki Barber. I could be wrong. Anyway, at the end of the game, I was supposed to be out on the field for the coaches shaking hands, and I wasn't there. I stayed on the sideline because this guy looked really, really hurt. And the director, Chip Dean, lit into me, and I was not where he wanted me to be, and he let me have it. And I was mad to the point of tears of rage because he had embarrassed me in front of everybody, but I'd let him down ultimately. And long story longer, Tiki Barber torn his ACL, and the Giants' chances for playoff slot were lost that night. And it was the lead story, especially, as you might guess, in New York.
Absolutely.
Especially with the Giants. And was I right? Yes. Was I wrong? Yes. You could argue both points. I felt that I was in the right spot because I was a handheld operator, and I was one of the few who could be where I was.
Right, to get that image of him grimacing or sitting at the sideline looking up at the scoreboard.
He was right, and he was in tears of rage as well, I'm sure. And I've been through that, and I've torn my ACL, and I know what that feels like. And it was late in the game, and he didn't really have a chance, and I didn't give him a chance to reassign that assignment. And that's not was my normal assignment, and that's where I missed something. And he let me have it, and we talked about it later. And he's a great storyteller and great director, But that's one in case in point where I was so mad I could have spit nails because every one of my peers heard that I was incredibly in wrong position. And a fellow by the name of Joe Vanderford came up, put his hand on my shoulder at the end of the game, and said, "The lead story on SportsCenter tonight is that Tiki Barber just tore his ACL. You stayed in the exact right spot." And that's a long-winded story, but
it's
tangent.
Very illuminating to the things that we do deal with in terms of making decisions on the spot for what we think is the greater story. But in reality, as you're expressing, when it comes to the mechanism of the television or our productions, there are places that we are expected to be in, even if that is the lead story because of what was going on at the end of that game. He was looking for this coach interview that happens, that anyone who watches football knows that when the coach comes off and whoever the sideline reporter is, Lisa Salters or whoever it is at the time, they go and they talk to the winning and or losing coach depending on what that story is. And to not have that is just part of the programming. It's it's almost like not doing the opening to a show or the closing to a show. You don't watch Jimmy Fallon or whoever and not.
Right. Exactly. No, there were other cameras there. I don't want to imply that I totally.
Right.
No, but my coach or my quarterback hero, profile of Eli Manning running off the field or something, or running onto the midfield, was a cut that he had planned in his mind. And once again, he was nowhere close to wrong. If we had to assign blame, and I don't think he would or I would, but if we did, it would be that I didn't do the job I was supposed to do.
Right. You left your wingman, so to speak.
Yeah, a little bit. I did. And you know what? I felt it was worth it, but getting way off on a tangent. My point is that was a critical story. And once again, I hate to say it, but with New York, it blew up, 5 times bigger than a missed handshake.
Coach, right.
And that handshake was covered by Alan Powers, what we call Alpo, great camera operator. But I got an earful, and sometimes that happens, and you don't want to do that. You never want to break serve if you don't have to. But ultimately, I liken what we do to being like a musician. That there's certain players that are playing drums, and certain players are playing bass, and then how much improvisation goes on depends on certain positions and what can you do and what can't you do, and can you show me this? Can you do that? Can you go here? Can you go there? Can you look around? I want to tell one more TBS story if I can. I finally got a chance to run low first. Like I said, I didn't want to because I wanted to be able to work both dugouts. But I said, dadgummit, I'm going to still work both dugouts. And I would come in early like we all did, and I'd help set up. And then I would follow, God rest his soul, Pete Van Wieren, one of our announcers, as he'd walk through the press room, and he would pick up 8 of the 12 press releases. And I would methodically just go in right behind him, note what he had done, say, hello, Pete. Hey, how you doing? He came in 4 hours earlier than anybody else. His nickname was the Professor because he did dig into stats and notes deeper than anybody else ever did.
Especially probably at that time, right? Because the idea of analytics was not really a popular thing.
Nowhere close.
Right.
Close. This is, 30 years ago.
Right.
So I would go and I would read everything he read, and I would see that that this Braves player had roomed with this Cincinnati Reds player, and that they both developed their curveball, and I knew that as soon as he mentioned a curveball by,
this said player
on the Braves, I'd go right to the bullpen and I'd find that guy because I'd done my homework because we had 3.5 hours before we were going on the air. Pre-game shows weren't quite as big at that point in time. And eventually the directors would say, Steve, is that him? I'd go, yes. They say, are you sure? I'd say, absolutely. Take it to the bank. And as soon as they mentioned the guy's name, pow, there they'd cut to my camera, and there would be this guy who was a journeyman, wasn't great. And you would hear the announcer go into talkback. Good shot.
What is
How
talkback?
Did you find that guy?
Explain
into talkback. Talkback is where where the announcers can talk in back to the. They have 3 buttons. They have a cough button, and forgive me, I'm trying to think. I'm going blank. Anyway, the talkback, they can talk to the truck directly without it going over the air.
Okay.
The talkback mutes the mic to the air and allows for them to talk to a producer or director. Anyway, you get 4 or 5 or 6 of those in a week, and the directors start trusting you. And that was a cheat that I used to do all the time. I say it's a cheat. It was perfectly available. It wasn't hiding. But so my colleagues would prefer to watch Cartoon Network or whatever was on television in the thing, and I would just sit there and every time a team came in, I would get the media guide and I would study it. This is before directors handed you headshot sheets of all 24 players of the other team, so we really didn't know what 24 looked like.
Right.
So I would go through.
Unless you went to go check them
unless
out.
I went and did the dirty work, so to speak. But by knowing all those people, I would work extremely hard the first game of a 3 or 4 game series, so that by the end I knew 20 of their players and could figure out the other few. And so when they talked about them, I tried to pounce and tried to get on them as quick as I could. And at that point in time, I was running a low camera, which is a side swing, which name states itself. You have a batter head to toe. You see it in the primary there is a batter. See if there's a check swing. You can see whether or not they came through or past the plate or not, and that's a common replay there. But in those days, once again, we were in tape, so they cut off me as soon as there was or the tape operators cut away from that image. So a lot of times I didn't have any replays at all. That was just the nature of the beast. Once again, low man on the totem pole. And it was a hard-working position, and I worked crazy hard on it. And my goal was to always get 3 tallies in between each pitch, which sounds ambitious, but I could get the catcher looking over. I could get the batter adjusting his gloves. I could get the pitcher, roughing up a new ball. I could get the manager giving a signal. I could get the third base coach giving another signal. I could get the runner who's looking around to see he's about to get picked off. I could see third base, shortstop, second base, right field, left field, center field.
And all this is part of the storytelling process that essentially everyone is trying to do.
Everybody's moving and everybody's positioning themselves depending on the sequence and now there's 2 strikes. Now he's going to be much more conservative in his swinging. Now everybody moves a couple of steps. And telling that story and weaving that story visually and giving support to the announcers. And once the announcer knows that you know baseball, it's a huge get for you because you become an accepted member of their team, so to speak, in that regard. And understanding the complexities of that and the nuance and picking up on something that's not normal, is just as big a thing. Or you can routinely just set up for a head to toe side spling, and you wouldn't be wrong. And I did that one for a number of years, a long time, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. It was a lot of fun, and I still do it for TBS for playoffs, as you do for TBS so well, for the playoff run as well. But being able to also look into the dugout over my shoulder and see what's going on. Hey, Steve Angel just picked up a bat. Pitcher X may be about ready to run out of gas because he's coming up fourth in the next half inning. So looks to me like he's been told by the manager, go get some swings. You're going to pinch hit next inning if we get a runner on.
And that type of intel helps support and is relayed up because you would typically probably say something to someone like, hey, I just saw so-and-so come out the dugout or out the clubhouse and came on up, which is, like you're saying, would lead to the next story, which intel helps out the announcers to see it because they can't see in there.
No, they can't, and they only have limited knowledge, and we try to support them in every shape, form, and manner to make them, look smarter, and not just smarter, better ways to tell the story.
Absolutely.
And are you pulling with me, or are you pulling against me? Hopefully you're all pulling the rope the same way, and maybe it's a bad analogy, but I don't think so. Or you're just doing your job and then you sit down in between innings and drink your Diet Coke, which I enjoy thoroughly. But I usually didn't sit down during games proper, and those could run 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And a hot July night, it's a pretty exhausting thing to concentrate. Pulling focus that many times is another challenge as well, and you do it quite well. And there's a number of people that do. I speak to somebody like Al Issue, who knows the game, and he cut his teeth doing 20, 30 years of WGN baseball in Chicago before he moved on to Sunday Night Baseball, and he's probably the gold standard along with Steve Lowe in terms of doing that stuff. And directors will fight tooth and nail to get those guys on their show because they know something good is going to happen.
Am I at a turn? Was it Steve Lowe that had the Kurt Schilling bleeding leg ankle?
Actually, that was Al Issue.
That was
Al
Al.
Issue had that shot, had that image, and
I knew it was one of those guys because at first it was not acknowledged at first. That's how I remember that story going. For some reason, it was someone in the truck. Like in the truck, they had noticed it, and he was trying to sell it. Like, hey, there's something going on here with his leg.
Right.
And eventually, I mean, let's be honest, that's a very iconic game for him.
Oh, totally. Totally so. If I can share one, I did.
Yes.
And it was the last time the Celtics won an NBA championship. They won on their floor in Boston. Forgive me, I can't remember the year. Kevin Garnett screamed, "Anything is possible."
That's right.
To Michelle Tafoya. I shot that interview, but that's neither here nor there. The story I want to tell is that the game was getting out of hand pretty handily, and I think it was against the Lakers, if memory serves. And everybody was standing up on the bench on the sideline. Doc Rivers was there, and the big three of Garnett,
Paul Pierce,
and my man Ray Allen. And we had an RF camera. It was run by a fellow by the name of Andy Italiano, who's a spectacular camera operator. And he was on a different channel from our normal PL or our normal.
And the RF is basically a non-tethered camera.
Yes.
Whereas everyone else has a cord, but the RF is basically a just that. It's a Wi-Fi camera, for the lack of a better way to put it.
Yes, and it roams free and can go places that nobody else ever could, but it also has some limits in terms of the interaction with it doesn't hear what we're talking about. And long story longer, it got apparent, and now it's just a matter of trying to fight against some of the other camera operators. And I said quietly to our director, "Hey, they're about to pour Gatorade on Doc Rivers," and he said, "Lay out, be quiet. They don't do that in basketball. They only do that in football." And I said, "I'm telling you, they've got the thing up there, and they're going to do it." And he said, "Steve, no, they're not." and the image of he finally tells Andy Italiano to get over to this position, which we would never be able to be in a normal spot, right in front of Doc. And it's a very iconic image of the Gatorade being poured onto the back of Doc, because he had no earthly idea.
Right.
His eyes are big as saucers, and the only ones bigger are Andy Italiano's, who also didn't know that they were about to do this. He was just instructed to get in front of Doc, because the time for the game was just about to wind down.
To get the handshake or his elation at the end.
Exactly. And finally, after X number of years, the Celtics are again champions. And Doc later, sidebar, donated that jacket, and somebody made $10,000 or $20,000 in a celebrity auction
of a Gatorade-filled jacket.
Of a Gatorade-filled jacket, yes, exactly. That is a one of a kind, you know, right. And nobody's done that, I don't think, before or since in terms of basketball. My point to all this is that I felt a very, very strong sense of ownership, because I saw it out of my open eye. Had nothing to do with covering the game proper. Had everything to do with the celebration, and the people up top all got it. The hard camera operators, several people got it, and the Supermo camera operator got it, and the guy right in front. So we had a 5 or 6 camera replay of this. I don't know if it'd be iconic. Some of the guys in Boston might say it is.
Absolutely.
And I feel a small
sense
bit of ownership. That's not to say it wouldn't have been captured, but I think it was captured in its entirety. Somebody might have had part of it. And maybe that's just being a little arrogant. But I saw it and went, what is this? Once again, we're referring to what you're talking about, as seeing something out of the ordinary. You know, at the time, I was just trying to find my player who I was supposed to follow out onto the floor. And
it wasn't Big Baby, was it?
You know, it might not have been. Then again, it might have been.
No. I'm actually segueing you to another one of these sort of instances.
Well, that because I'm thick as a brick, I didn't really see that, and that would be that I at one time said, hey, the Celtics were well up, game was in hand, people were taking off their tape, putting ice on their backs, so on and so forth, and lo and behold, they put in their second unit, which included Big Baby. I'm trying to think of his name.
Glenn Davis.
Glenn Davis, thank you. I shot several of his games at LSU. He was a very good college player. And lo and behold, they came back, and the big three, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, all had to go back in the game. And Kevin Garnett shared a few points of wisdom with Big Baby as the veteran versus the rookie or the second-year player. And Big Baby was pretty torn up, and he was crying. I had a wide-angle lens under the basket. I couldn't really zoom in that tight. I told the director, hey, Big Baby's crying, to which I get the dismissive, yeah, that's what babies do, Steve, you know.
Because they probably thought you were being a smart ass a little bit.
Yes, that would not have been out of the ordinary in terms of my behavior. And lo and behold, somebody zoomed in very tight on him, and sure enough, there was a tear. It was a tear of angst or rage because a veteran had jumped his case, because instead of having 9 minutes of rest, they had to go back in and reapply themselves and loosen themselves up, and they ended up winning the game. But that's the perfect time for people, especially veterans, to get hurt or fatigued, or if you could possibly rest
Derrick Rose.
Yes, exactly. And to that came the term "Big Baby's crying," which we used a lot as to say, hey, check this out, something's going on the bench. That's just one of our little sheets.
A little nomenclature there, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But it just meant, hey, check out what's going on. Basically, is what we use it for now.
It's either that or go, ooh,
he was crying. He was genuinely crying, and it was, I say, tears of rage, not tears because he was a baby.
Right.
By any stretch of the imagination.
It was frustration. It was a frustration.
Yes,
cry.
total frustration. He got yelled at by his colleague, and he was.
And a superstar colleague too. I mean, let's put it in his perspective. Like Glenn Davis at the time, though he's obviously he's an elite basketball player because he's in the league, but there's still levels to it. So when you have a guy who is probably going to be a Hall of Famer in any one of those three guys that you named, to have them come down on you when you're still trying to make your way in the, it's like anything else, making your way at the job or at the biz. He felt that, and you were spot on by catching it because you don't see that often. A lot of athletes don't make themselves that vulnerable, and especially not on the court. They might do this in the back hallway, they might do it in the locker room, but to catch somebody on the court doing that is not unprecedented, but it's rare. It's very rare. One
Well,
way or
you see
another.
it time to time with rookies and with,
Right.
there are certain people, and I would say the same dynamic holds true with the job you and I do. There's certain people that will share knowledge and other people that will never share it and will take it to their grave. And a good teammate, bad teammate kind of thing. I don't want to break my arm to pat myself on the back, but I thought I was a good teammate to tell people that Doc Rivers was about to have Gatorade poured all over him. I think a bad teammate would have just shot at himself and had the only person that had the entire replay, which I could have easily done. I didn't think it was the right thing to do. I don't believe in being that way, and I take an immense amount of joy and pride in seeing a well framed image that I know I may have helped. To that end, I think, and this is one thing I'm sure your other guys have talked about better than I ever will. We have a term or a phrase we call living outside the viewfinder, which is looking around, looking over. The people in the TV truck are out next to the dumpster, sometimes a half a mile away from the actual game itself. They can't see this stuff if we don't say it or we don't shoot it. And some of the really good operators can shoot what they're seeing, what they're supposed to be shooting, and also look around and see, hey, so-and-so's got his glove. He's going out to play second base. Is he really? Because I thought he was hurt. Well, it's that important because they're getting down to brass tacks. It's bottom of the eighth here, and they don't trust that rookie.
That's right.
They're going to put this guy in, and you could see that while you're live with a completely different image. If you've really got your head in the game, if you know what the game is about, if you know what's going on with the game, and you're in tune, in step with the dynamic, or
the old chameleon eye, the old chameleon eye.
Yeah, and being able to, that's a great way to put that, Devin. Is